Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I want to give it 2 minutes. Let's start at 10:02 just to give the scragglers a chance to join, but I want to respect your time, especially for you that joined on time. But let's give it just 2 minutes and then we'll go ahead and start at 10:02. Okay? I thank you for your time today. Okay, as promised, I'm going to start at 10:02 and it's 10:02, and I want to thank you guys for joining today. This session today, I'm going to be talking about forms and workflow development on Office 365, some alternatives for being able to create some pretty complex forms and automate your business processes. If you look on your screen right there for the webinar, there is a question panel there. So you can take advantage of that. Since I'm running this session by myself today, I would ask that you would send me an email. You see my email there, alexv@netwoven.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me emails. If I don't quite answer your question or I don't get around to answering it, I'd be happy to do any kind of follow-up I need. Whatever your question is, feel free to reach out to me and ask me anything you want to. And just so you know why this is done by Netwoven, we are the #1 Nintex partner. Nintex is only sold through partners, and so we're based out of the Silicon Valley. As you can see, we have a bunch of different clients that we work with. But besides doing just Nintex, we are a solution consulting, staffing organization as well. Our main focus is on Microsoft technologies, but we do reach outside of that, into Salesforce and stuff like that. So pretty much everything we do is around all the technologies that you see on the right-hand side. So a little background on myself here as far as what I do. I'm strictly focused on Nintex. So I'm a Nintex solution architect here at Netwoven. I did work for Microsoft for many years and have been involved in Microsoft technologies and development for a long time. But one of the biggest things I wanted to point out here is the last bullet point item. If and when you decide to move towards Office 365 Nintex, we do try to make you as successful with this product as we can. And so a lot of times when you do your free trial, if you request a free trial through us, we'll actually give you some free training, very similar to what we're doing today, but much more comprehensive because we don't have the time restraint that we have today. So, the whole thing that most people are coming to us and asking is, we end up spending a lot of time. If you take a look at this chart kind of depicts one information worker and how people usually spend their time and you can see that the majority of the time is spent creating documents, searching for information, all the way on down the line. That equates to a lot of time per week. So what we hope to accomplish with using Nintex forms and workflow and some of the other technologies involved here is to really diminish these time frames to make it a lot easier for people to do stuff and kind of gain some time back. Now, if we take a look at that original slide I was showing you, I just want to point out that when you purchase Nintex, Nintex includes a lot of different capabilities. So today we're going to focus on those first two of building workflows and forms. But what you should also notice is that mobile devices are also covered as well. I'm going to try to cover that today as we build out a solution. And also being able to connect to other applications. So when you think of your DocuSigns, when you think of maybe integrating with Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce and being able to push and pull information, there's some huge advantages to doing this as well, because when you look at those other products, and I'm just using CRM as an example, a lot of times you're paying around $2,000 per person per year to be able to access those systems. So what you can do with the connectors is you can actually pull information and mirror that information. So a lot of times what I'll do is help customers with Salesforce or Dynamics, where they can actually take a lot of the information that the standard users don't need access to every day and kind of mirror that information in Office 365 in either a SharePoint list or possibly a document library. But it doesn't have to be Microsoft technologies. It can also be something like Box, Dropbox, and synchronizing there as well. This kind of fifth item here, the Nintex document generation, I have a slide on this coming up, but this is a capability that's available to you with the product that allows you to take templates, Word templates, Excel templates, PowerPoint templates, and populate them with data inside your workflow and being able to push that out into some end format. And so the cool thing about this is it's available to you on Salesforce. It's available to you in what we call Nintex Workflow Cloud, which is a workflow engine that runs in the cloud. It's not reliant on SharePoint. And also being able to do it within the SharePoint environment as well. So I'll have a slide coming up in a second that'll show you that. And just so you know, I don't intend to PowerPoint you to death. I want to get right into the demo as quick as possible. The last part here is this thing called Hawkeye. Hawkeye is a data warehouse for when you're building Nintex solutions where you can actually push data. Let's say you're going to push expense reports or something like that to the actual data warehouse, and then you can come back and report on it. So you can see which groups are spending the most amount of time and money traveling, and you can basically drill down and get a lot of intelligence out of your data by storing it in the data warehouse. Another thing too is that they give you the ability to view what's going on in your environment that you're using Nintex in. So if you're using Nintex on-premise or in Office 365, you can see where everything's deployed. Now, as I said, with document generation, we can push information into these templates. So you create, like I said, you can create templates in a variety of different formats, and you can merge different document types together. So when you think about it, I could have a Word document, a PowerPoint document, and an Excel sheet, and I could actually create a final output in PDF where it'll actually merge all the document types together. So Nintex document generation is something that is very robust. It's very unique in the sense of the things that you can do. And even in the case of Salesforce, you can use Excel spreadsheets as middleware to do calculations and then push it to the final output, which could be a PDF, Excel, a bunch of different formats you can go into. You can tag documents with different values and actually have them auto-generate for you. So this is something that if you need to explore this more, you could send me an email and I could give you some demonstrations of this unique capability. One thing I wanted to talk about today is you've always had this ability to create like your classic forms on the right-hand side. That's been around for a long time. This is like doing it in InfoPath where you can get that pixel perfect type of layout in a form. What's new that they've done is added something called responsive forms on the left-hand side. What this basically means is that the form realizes its constraints within the device that it's displaying on. So if it's a desktop, it'll show in one way. If it's your phone, it doesn't matter what type of phone you have, it'll actually adapt to that actual device as well, which can be good and bad depending on when you're designing the form. You have to be a little bit conscious of how you're laying things out. But for the most part, what you'll find is that for any medium to simple forms, you will be able to create forms in about I would say less than half the time of laying it out in a classic form, because a classic form is going to be just your pixel perfect PDF style form. And so there's a big difference between the two, and hopefully I'll show that to you today. I was talking about this Nintex Hawkeye, and if you just take a real quick look at the screen, one of the things that Hawkeye does for you, there's something called an inventory lens. And what it does is it gives you the ability as an administrator to be able to take a look at all the workflows and forms and where your forms and workflows are being published within your tenant. So in this situation, this is actually a screenshot of my tenants. I have two tenants. I have an Office 365 and a SharePoint on-premise. So you can see in the upper right, you can actually see where I have an Office 365. I have 16 workflows there. And then you can see in SharePoint 2013, I have 24 workflows. And you get a lot of different information as far as location, complexity, use. What are your top workflows being used? So a lot of times you'll deploy a workflow and it might be very popular, and you'll be able to detect that within this inventory lens. But you'll also be able to look and see, well, maybe I created an application and not many people are using it. Let me find out why. You might have failures. You might have a site that's too hard to navigate. So there's a lot of different things that can come out of this that you can take advantage of by getting this kind of metrics on what's going on. So, from the viewpoint of workflows and by data source here, you can see that, 54 in the center for Office 365 and 188 throughout the whole enterprise. That, some are created by me, some are not. So some really cool information that you can take advantage of when you're managing this. As far as being able to use and automate different types of processes, there's all kinds of things that you can do. But a very common pattern that you see, and I'm going to show this to you next, is doing something like this where you want to automate a leave request. Someone fills out a form on the left-hand side. They actually go, and then that gets submitted to the manager on the far right. The manager can approve it or reject it. If it gets rejected, it gets sent back as a notification to the employee. If it's approved, we can keep on pushing it. And with the Nintex workflow, we can update, the Outlook calendar. We can do all kinds of things, all the way to being able to connect to back-end systems and automate this process. I've done this presentation a lot, and I've usually done this using the automate a leave request. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do an expense report today, so it might have a little hiccups here and there, but I wanted to do something on the fly just so you could see how dynamic this product is. The basic premise here is that when you look at creating a workflow is usually started in one of three ways. A workflow can be initiated on a schedule, so you can schedule a maintenance workflow. It can be started when an item is created in a SharePoint list, and it can be started when an item is modified. And these are all conditional starts that you can take advantage of. The great thing about this is when you learn to use this drag and drop surface within the browser, this will work in Office 365 and on-premise. So should you do a hybrid environment, you're not having to worry about, I have to learn one product for on-premise and another product for Office 365. They're basically the same. The on-premise product has a little bit more functionality because it's been around longer, but what you'll find is you're 100% productive if you know how to use one or the other, because the UI is pretty much almost identical, okay? And again, going back to that slide real quick, no coding. You're not really doing any coding at all. You're setting configurations and using action items. So there are a lot of different action items available, all the way down to calling web services. So if you have to connect to some backend system that we don't have a connector for, you can take advantage of that. But in most cases, like if you're going to connect to CRM, Salesforce, you're going to connect to DocuSign, Adobe Sign. I mean, these are all different back-end systems that there are connectors for. And I'd say about every quarter, a couple more connectors come online. So some of them are free, some of them cost money. It just depends on what you're trying to do. So you'll have to look those up and take a look, or you can send me an email. This is the basic, when you take a look at the basic framework of automating a request, and pretty much any type of request that comes through, whether it's expense reporting or multi-level approvals, it always kind of happens when someone makes a submission. The workflow starts based on the conditions we set. Then we figure out, do we want to send a SharePoint task to a manager? Then the manager responds, and then we can go down the proper branch for being able to do this. So one of the things that we do when you purchase this product is when we train you, we get you very familiar with this pattern and also more complex patterns as well for doing multi-level approval. So what you're looking at on the screen right now is a single level approval, but I'm also going to show you an example of a multi-level approval where we have to get 3 levels of approval for a process. So taking a look at another feature is something called lazy approval. If you're paying attention in the previous slide, we were taking a look at the manager had the option to do this thing called lazy approval. And the whole thing about lazy approval is that when you're using a task, you see this task in the middle. When you assign a task to someone, someone's going to receive an email. And so what we wanted to make sure is that people do not have to use email as a way, to use their desktop as the only way to respond to a task. Everyone's busy, everyone's on the move, we all have mobile devices. So the whole idea here with lazy approval is by hitting a checkbox inside this assigned task, there's a configuration for this. Once we do that, anyone that's doing an approval, in their email, they'll have the option to respond via email. So instead of having to be chained to your desk and go to SharePoint and open up the task and approve it, you can just reply in the email. So this is probably the #1 manager love feature here is something called lazy approval. And I'll give you an example of that today. I wanted to show you this requisition because I did this requisition for a company a while back, and they kind of wanted to see in their proof of concept that they were doing a 3-level approval with a conditional approval in the last stage. So as you can see with the requisition, it's initially submitted by an administrative assistant. It goes to C-level approval. If it's approved, it goes to finance approval. And if that's approved, then we go into a conditional approval where if it's greater than $10,000, it goes to one individual. Otherwise, it goes to another individual. So we branch in that situation. And then once they approve that, it goes and notifies all the parties that the requisition was successful. The one cool thing about this is that you're not just bound by approval or denial. You can add as many options as you want to for that individual. So very common, you want to give someone the ability to say, hey, I need more information. So let's say in this last stage here, someone needed more information. The great thing about this product, and I really want to point this out, is that when we make a jump from one stage of our workflow to another, you can do that very easily using Nintex workflow, because to go from a final approval back to a C-level because we need more information, that's a very easy thing to do. If you were to try to do it in coding and using SharePoint Designer, that's something that would probably take you more than 40 hours or possibly more, depending on the complexity of how you jump back and forth. So the next slide that I'm showing you is the actual workflow for that process. And the way it works is that, and I want to bring up a pen, when the workflow starts, this thing called a state machine is set to initial state. The initial state in this situation is going to be initial submit. And so what's going to happen is it's going to go and do everything down this branch. It'll go down this whole branch. It's going to do notifications. It's going to set some status so we get some information. It'll log some information. And then what you're not seeing at the bottom is that it's actually going to say, where do you want me to go to next, using something called a change state. You can see on the far right-hand side of your screen, there's something called a change state. there's a change state at the bottom of every one of these branches. And what it basically does is it goes down to the bottom of the branch, and then in the change state, you tell it where to go to next. So in this situation, in the first branch, I would tell it to go to C-level approval. It would go all the way down to the bottom, and then the next change state would tell it to go to the finance approval. It would go down here, and then we'd go to final approval. Well, in a situation like this, let's say that if the condition we had, if you were looking at that diagram, if it's greater than $10,000 right here, and we said yes to $10,000, it would go down this path. And let's say that this manager needed more info. All we'd have to do, as far as the people that are designing this workflow, instead of just having an approval and a denial branch, we could add a more info branch, and we could set the next state or change state to jump back to any place we want to. So that's kind of the unique property of this workflow engine, is being able to do this dynamic bouncing back and forth with this capability. So that's just, I just wanted to point that out, because this is something that goes far beyond just being able to do a single approval, which is, you know, pretty common. So when we go back and take a look at this, that's where you can take this vertical swim lane diagram and almost one for one for each vertical swim lane create a branch. So that's what you're seeing here, a branch for each vertical swim lane. And this is a real workflow that took care of that situation. So we'll build something more simple than that, and I'll show it to you as we move forward. Now, on the form design, I talked about this whole ability to do these responsive forms. On the right-hand side, I'm kind of showing you being able to do the info path, you know, PDF style forms. So you have that capability. That's always been there to do some very complex forms, hiding information based on user selection, being able to do repeating rows and different things like that. So that capability has always been there. And I'll show you a little bit of that when we have the time. And also the mobile factor. There's a free application. If you were to take a look at your phone right now and go into the store, there's something called Nintex Mobile. Nintex Mobile gives you the ability to display any forms that you publish on a mobile device. So you can push out to the mobile device. So let's say we do an expense reporting form. Instead of everyone having to go to the SharePoint site, they could just basically do that on their own mobile device and submit it, and it would be almost as if they were just sitting at their desktop and doing that. So you can take a whole category of applications, whether it's surveys, you name it, as long as they have access to the form on their mobile device. When they hit submit, that submission will go all the way back into the SharePoint list and kick off any workflows if you have one associated with that list, and allow the people to continue from there on. So this is a big plus. It's unlimited users, so when you create a form, you can have as many users using the mobile device as you want to, and there's full security on this. No one is ever going to have a form available to them unless they had it available to them in SharePoint. So all the security is there. And here's my last slide. Just looking at the ways that we can connect. So I talked about, you know, the ability to be able to connect to external applications as well. So we can push and pull information, you know, from Facebook, Box, Twitter, you know, you name it. DocuSign, if we have to send a document to DocuSign to get it signed, we can do that. So there's hundreds, literally hundreds of connectors you have here. So if you want to push, like I said, you could take some information, push it into Salesforce, and also mirror that information in Box or Google Drive or OneDrive or whatever. You have that capability to make that connection. So let me go ahead and get into this demonstration here. So I'm just going to start out with a list here that I'm calling expense reports. I just created this list about 20 minutes ago. And what I wanted to be able to do is, firstly, I want to create a form so we can make sure that our form's working correctly. So once you install this product, which is a really easy install through the store, you're going to click on the Nintex form. And then what will happen here is that the Nintex form designer is going to come up, and it's going to give you two options here. Do you want to go in classic, classic mode, which is your pixel perfect mode, or do you want to go responsive? I'm going to go responsive, and I might come back if we have time and do it and just show you what it would look like under classic. So I'm going to click under responsive, and then it's going to give me a layout to be able to work on. And it's going to look and see what columns I had available to in my list. It picks up all the lists and does an auto layout. One thing I want you to know is this Nintex Forms at the top is just a placeholder. You can put your own logos or do whatever you want to. You can delete it by hitting the trash can. But in a responsive form, we can go and we can make things a little bit wider, longer, whatever we want to do. In this expense report, I want two things. I want the title, and I also want to know the amount, the total amount that was spent in the expense report. So I'm going to go up here. I don't have to go to SharePoint. I'm going to say create a column, and I'm going to say total. I'm just going to call it, let's see, total, let's see, total expense, I'm going to call it. And this is going to be of type currency, and I'll just go with the defaults down here. And see, currency, so we got that. And so what you'll notice now is you didn't see it show up in here, but it is showing up in the lower left. If you look at all the controls that we have available to use, we can do list lookups, so I can have drop downs that come from other lists for selection. But under my list columns are all the columns that I have available. So if I go up and create another column, it will actually show up in this list. So the two that you get by default in a SharePoint list are always going to be your title and attachment, right? And it's whether you want to use attachments or not, it's up to you. So one of the things I want to do is I want to take a look at all the controls I have available to me, and you can see I have different things that I can take advantage of. So for this demonstration, what I want to do is I want to add a repeating section under title. So I drag and drop that, and it'll only let me drag and drop it to where it's going to fit in. You'll notice that everything else moved around. Now, if I was doing a classic form, if I would drag and drop on top of other controls and drop it, it would actually overlap those controls. This one will allow you to do that. So now what I'm going to do is I can go in here and set some of the values for this. So for in here, so I can say add a new expense item. I'm going to say save, and so you'll notice that right there I set the properties for that, and then maybe I want to have a title too, so I can double click and do this and add a title and call it expenses. So you can see I'm kind of building out this control. Now what do I want to have in this control? I want to know the date of your expense. So I'm going to drag and drop that in here. And as you can look on the right, there's always going to be the properties that are associated with all these things that I'm doing. But you can also double click on the control and see a more detailed version of it. I only want the date only. So I'm going to say yes to date only. So I'm going to say save right there. So I'm getting the date only. The next thing I want to do is I want to have a place for the user to put a description of the actual expense they did. So if you take a look, I want to take and use a multi-line. But before I do that, what I want to do is I want to shrink up the date and time to give myself some room over here. And so I'm going to take the multi-line, and I'm going to drag and drop this. And then if you look on the right-hand side, here's the title. So I'm actually going to go in here and set the title that says description. And I set it for the wrong thing. So that was meant for the date. So let me click on the line item here, and then I'm going to say description. And I'm having a bad typing day, so just forgive me for that. So here's the description, and then I want to have the line item total. So what I want for that, if you take a look, there's a single line item over here, and I'm going to drag and drop it on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go and we're going to call this one for the title. I'm going to highlight it, and then we're going to call this cost. Right? But we want to go a little farther than that. If you look on the right-hand side, I want to make this a currency. So I have a currency type. So now we've got these three things. So the next thing I want to do is I actually want to come in here and I want to have a running total of all the expenses that are added in here. So how do I do that? I'm going to go up and use something called a calculated value. So pay attention to this because this is a really unique property of this product. So I'm going to drag and drop the total expense right here. I'm going to make it a little smaller. I don't need it to be so wide. We're going to set the title. If I come in here and set the title, I'm going to say the total. Total expense cost. I want you to look at the data type. So the data type is going to be a currency. And just for the sake of it here, I'm going to go ahead and say put a prefix value of the $sign in there. Okay, so I'm gonna save that. Now another thing too is I want to have this value of total expense being saved somewhere. Now remember in the lower left hand side I had total expense. So I want to associate this control with that actual column. So look on the right hand side where it says connected to. I want to connect it to the total expense column. So now this value is going to go in there. And another thing I'm going to do as well, because I want to have access to this possibly later, is I can actually give this a name if I want to. So I can call it total. I'll just call it TE for total expense because I'm being lazy. But you'll notice also that I can put a formula in here. So at the top, what I want to do is I have all these runtime functions, and what I want to take advantage of is something called sum. And it says a set of values up here that I'm setting this to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to take the sum, and the sum of what? So I go into my name controls, and remember I called it TE, total expense. That's what I want to be able to take advantage of. That I want to take the sum. Actually, hang on one second. I made a mistake. And remember I told you I was doing this on the fly. We had the cost here. So I need to give this line item cost, I'm going to call it. I need to be able to sum these values right here. So I'm calling this line item cost. Now if we come back here, and forgive me because I made a mistake there. I want to take the sum, and that's where you're coming in with these runtime functions down here, just so you see where I'm getting this. We have all these different functions that we could take advantage of. I want the sum, and I go and highlight the center section. And I want to go back to my name controls, and remember I called it line item cost. Okay, so now this control right here is giving me the line item cost of everything. Now before I move forward, I want to test all this stuff, right? I want to go into the designer and I want to do a preview. I'm going to say generate preview, and now I can generate a preview and see if this is really working for me, if it's doing what I want. So I can go select a day, I can give it a description and a title, and then I can come in here and add some costs, and I'm just going to add some new line items in here. But you can see that my total expenses are being added, and I think everything's looking pretty good here. Maybe I want to default the date to the current date in case it was a one-day expense that I do, if I'm really diligent, which I was never good at it, working at any company, of doing my expenses on the day I did it. But let's say, for instance, I did. So to make it easier for that person, what I want to do is I want a default value, and I'm going to default it to today, just to save that person the extra input. So those two pieces of information are working. We're saving the total expense down here to a column. We have already got that. The last thing I want to do, and this is very common for companies, is you want someone to, instead of having to sign or do anything, you want them to acknowledge that everything is correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop this yes/no control down here. And on the right-hand side, the text I want is I agree that everything is correct. So this gets rid of This gets rid of a lot of the, whenever you have someone that needs to sign something. I'm having a hard time spelling today. I agree that everything is correct. And when you take a look at this, you can actually put in a title for this if you want to, saying, you know, I agree. Whatever, let's see, whatever you want to put in there. And then we get to give it a name is, I'm going to call this I agree, is the name of the control. So I'm going to show you why I'm doing that right now. So I have this control down here, but what I want to make sure is they cannot save this until they agree that everything is correct that they entered, right? We're trying to do this acknowledgement that I have read everything, or, you know, something like that. It's more of a legal thing to get rid of signatures. This bypasses a digital signature. So in order to make sure that that happens, I can use something called rules. So you can see on the right-hand side, I have rules. If you select a control and then you say add a rule, now we can add a couple different types of rules. We can add a validation rule, or we can hide or disable depending on different controls. So this is how you're able to go in there and say, hide these controls based on a user selection because it doesn't make sense that they fill those out. In this situation, I want to do an invalidation. Please, I'm going to say, please check. Please agree. God, I'm having a really bad typing day. Please agree down at the bottom. And so how do I set this up in the rules? Is I go in here and I can set up the rule right here. I have my name controls, and the name control was called I agree. And if the value is equal to false, which means it's not checked, then what should happen is we should get a validation message coming in here. So let's go ahead and verify that, and then we'll be done with this form and we can take a look at it. So I'm going to generate the preview, and I want to just check some of these things to make sure that things are correct. Here's the date. I put in here, I have some costs that I'm putting in there, one expense item. I'm going to hit save and watch what happens. It says that the title's a required field, so I put in the title, but notice down here, I also get this, it says, you must agree. So if I hit save, it brings me right back here. So I must check this before we can move on. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that right now. Now we have this form. I'm gonna go ahead and publish this form. Oh, before I do that, what I wanna do is I wanna come up to form settings, and I also wanna make this a mobile application as well. So I'm gonna go with creating this, and I'm gonna call this A3 is gonna be the name of the form, just so that we can look at it real quick. So I'm going to say save, and I'm also going to publish. So now what you're going to see is we successfully published this form. If everything's okay, I'm just going to go ahead and close there. And now if we come to expense report, and this has been published, now if I do new, you'll see that the form comes up, and I'm going to just type in some stuff here just so you can see this working. And I'm going to add a new expense item. And you can see that the total is being added up here, and I'm going to try to hit save. And you can say, oh, wait, I agree. And so I go in there, and now what you should see is we should see a new entry in our list, right? I want the title, and I had another column I created, which is called a total expense. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a workflow associated with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Nintex workflow. Now with the Nintex workflow, we can do some pretty cool things here. So I'm going to show you how we get this started to start with. So create a list workflow. Let me go ahead and set the settings. So the first thing you do in a workflow is you set the settings, you give it a name. I'm going to call it expense report 1 as a workflow name. I want you to know by default you can start a workflow manually. Remember I told you there's 3 ways to kick off a workflow. You can kick it off manually when an item is created, when an item is modified, and also on a schedule. So I'm going to make it so that when an item is created, the workflow will start. We'll basically We can enable both of these if we want to. I just wanted to start when anyone does a new submission. So now this workflow is going to kick off whenever someone does a new submission. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to do something, I wanted to do a conditional start here. I want to do something a little bit more unique because we have some time here. I'm going to do a conditional branch. And here's what I want to do to make this look real. What I want to do is I want to take a look at the list. And in the list, remember I had the total expense. So in my list, I have the total expense. What was the total value of the total expense that someone's submitting? If the value is greater than $5,000, I want to go down a branch here. I want to go down yes. So I'm saying if greater than $5,000, yes, go down this branch. If not, no. Very common. You get an expense report. You get an expense that needs to be approved, and if it goes over a different value, it might have to go to a different manager or go through a different process. So in this situation, what I'm going to do, and on the left-hand side are all my different types of actions I can do. You can see with integrating to different back-end systems like Box, DocuSign, Dynamics, all these different things I can do, Salesforce, all the lists and libraries, checking things in and out of Office 365 lists and libraries, downloading files, querying a list for information. So I can, in a workflow, I can branch out and touch any part of SharePoint I want to in Office 365. I can get all the information I want to. I was taking advantage of conditional branch, which is all your different logic and flow that you have on your left-hand side. Here's that state machine I was telling you about earlier that we could use on a more complex multi-approval situation. Different types of operations, checking things, checking out, setting workflow status, all different kinds of provisioning for those of you on the line that are managing Office 365. You can actually create workflows that create users and create sites, so you can govern your site. But just a lot of different things you can do. Yammer, user provisioning, Exchange, calendar stuff, and all kinds of utility stuff for converting values from one format to another. You have that available to you. So at the top, I can actually select and type in task. So if I type in TAS, now I can see I can assign a task. So let's say that someone purchases something over $5,000. I can assign a task to an individual. So I'm going to go in here, and because I don't want my manager to think I'm spending a lot of information, I'm going to actually say expense approval for, and I'm going to say that this is if you look on the right-hand side, I have all these different values available to me for the items and the workflow context as well. So I know who's submitting, so I'm going to say the initiator's display name. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dash, and we should be able to come in here, and if we look at the item properties, remember we had total expense. So it's going to put the total expense in here. I might have to put a $sign if I'm not, because the total expense probably won't have a $sign. So this will actually put a $sign there. I don't need a description. It's eject or it's approve or reject, but remember I told you we can add different outcomes if we want to. So if I need more info, I could say I want more info. I can add those in later. You can put in the default outcome. I'm going to say rejected. Remember I talked about lazy approval so that the manager can approve via email. So when I put that in there, the manager will get an approval that they can do through email. Now, a lot of people ask me this question. You're assigning a task. What happens if the person doesn't follow through with the task? If you look down here, you have all these types of things that you can send, like what is the initial email that's sent to the user for this task? You can modify the subject title and the email body for that. You can dictate how often reminders are sent. So if you look here, I can actually say send a reminder daily to a manager, or weekly or monthly, or how many times I want to. I can cancel I can also have the cancellation email in case some other manager approved it. But another thing too that's really important is being able to do escalation. So I can escalate to another person, or what I can do is I can auto-complete the task. So I can actually go in there and auto-complete the task if I want to after a certain amount of time. So you have all these capabilities to be able to make sure that you're not having to intervene in this process to bring that back up. You can actually figure out how you want this to take place as far as escalating or auto-completing. Another thing that I want to point out here is that when the user sees a form, they can actually modify via the form. Now again, you have the task form that can be done responsive or classic. Let me show you classic real quick. It'll do an auto layout for all the items that we have. Here are our list items at the bottom. But what I want you to notice is that when you're in this mode of classic, when you move stuff around, you can overlap stuff. You can do some crazy things. Like so that what I just did just now with that overlapping would never happen if you were doing it inside of responsive form. So just you see that these are the kinds of things that you can do. This is considered to be a classic form, and I'm just going to save this. I'm saving this classic form, and I'm going to close. So now the task form is going to be a classic form, but the form we input data in will actually be a responsive form. So I've got everything I want set up in here. I'm going to send the email at the top to the participant who's the manager. I'm playing the manager role here, and let's go ahead and save this. And now we're going to see that we get approved or rejected. So the last thing I might want to do is send an email. So I'm going to type in the upper left hand side, I'm going to type email. And let's say in this situation that it's approved. Now remember, for this real workflow, you would go and fill out all these branches to figure out other things you do. So if the person was rejected, you'd send an email saying, hey, you've been rejected, this is why, and then you could have a bunch of other logic that you use behind that. But we're just going to say in this situation, it's a great above $5,000. We're going to this manager, and then if this approves it, then we're going to send the email to the person. And in this situation, I can actually do a workflow context, and I can actually send it to the initiator, which was me. I'm going to fill out the form. So you can see dynamically it's filling that out. And I say you have been approved. And then I can add anything dynamic to that I want to. If I look at the item properties, remember we had total expense, and I think I need to have this. I thought I needed to have the $ up here, so let me just put that $ in front of it. I might get $2 signs. I just haven't done this in a while. And I'm just going to say congrats. It's something to say in the email body because you got to say something. So let's go ahead and take and publish this. And we'll say publish. So it's publishing the workflow. And then while that's happening, I wanted to bring up something. I want to show you what this would look like on a mobile device. So let me go ahead and open up my mobile device. And here's a Nintex. If you're looking on the screen, here's the actual Nintex mobile application. And if I do a refresh right here, we should see A3 come up. If I did it right. And I must have done something wrong on the form. Let's see. I don't know if it was this expense report. Nope, it's still publishing the workflow. Hang on one second. Let me figure out what I did wrong just so you can see that this is a live session. Let's go back and take a look at the expense report form. And I'm just trying to figure out real quick how come that form didn't show up on my mobile device, my Android device. So we'll take a look at the form. And my guess is under form settings, I forgot to set something up. So I'm going to go into form settings once it comes up. And Nintex Mobile. And oh, I didn't publish it to the device. So that was my problem there. So now A3 should show up once I publish it. Then we'll take a look at it. So I apologize for that. That was my fault. And so let's go ahead and it's been published successfully. Let me get you back to my screen where I was showing you the actual form. Hang on one second. I have to reload my mobile sharing application, and hopefully it's not going to bomb out on me. Let me find the device. I found the device. Let me select it. And here it is off the screen, which is not good. There we go. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back to that application, and let's go ahead and put in a form. If I refresh the screen real quick, let me make this a little bit bigger so people can see it. So here's A3, which is the form that I submitted. So let's go ahead and select that. And I'm using an Android. So a title's required. I'm going to say from mobile. I'm going to select an expense I want to do. So I'm going to say test expense. And the cost is going to be $5,100. So that's my first expense that I have right here. And you'll see here in a second that here's the 5,001. Now, one thing that's unique about this product as well is that I can also go in here and I can do attachments. So I can actually take a picture of my expense report, right? So I don't have an expense report to take a picture of. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take a picture of my of a card here and say done. And so let's just assume, hang on one second. So let's just assume it's a little bit slow because it's doing the video part right there. But let's just assume that that was a picture of my actual expense report. So as I get my expense reports, I can actually get that. So you'll notice at the bottom right here, it took a little while. That was just because it's that's just because it's going through and saving this information. But the cool thing about this is that I could take pictures of all my expense report receipts and submit those. So from mobile, let's go ahead and submit this. Fix the validation issue. What did I forget there? Oh, remember I had to agree that everything's correct at the bottom? Let me select that and then submit. So now, if we get away from the mobile device, and if we go back to our actual list, it'll take about a minute to come through, but here's my expense reports. Here's my from mobile, right? And so I want to get my email queued up because I'm going to get something showing up through an email here any second. And what we should see is we should be able to go in here and we should be able to see that the workflow is actually running. So if we take a look from a point of view here, we can see that the expense report 1 is actually running. We can take a look here and see what's going on. And also, so we can see that expense report was a task was created. So let's take a look at that task. And I'm going to bring it up for you. Here it is. Expense report approval for Alex Vieira. Remember, I wasn't sure whether I needed that extra $sign. I didn't need it. Here's a new task. And it's up to me here at this point as a manager. I can say whether I want to approve or reject. So remember, if I approve it, this person's going to get an email saying that you approve. So we're going down that path. And I can put in, say, you know, anything I want to. Thank you, and approved. So without having to type anything, we went all the way back into SharePoint via our email. And what we should see coming through in about a minute is we should see an acknowledgement of that workflow saying, hey, you've been approved for your $5,000. So that's basically what we were seeing right here. We went down this path. We went down the conditional branch. It was greater than $5,000. This manager went to approve it, and we took advantage of that ability to do that. So now the email comes through, and you can see congrats is what I put in there, and sending you've been approved for that $5,001. So we went full loop all the way through this. Okay. Okay. And one thing I want to promise to you is I know I kind of went through that fast. You have my email, and I'm going to go through this real quick of showing this to you. Let me go ahead and start this back up again. I just wanted to show you the different ways that people are using Nintex workflow in Office 365 and on SharePoint on-premise. So pretty much any workflow you can think about, you can pretty much create in here. So contract management all the way to product lifecycle, depending on what groups you have, human resources for doing all kinds of things you can do. A lot of the things that I'm showing you today, like that I've talked about today, like expense reports or doing something like time off reporting, I have templates, so you don't have to start from scratch. And also, beyond just doing basic training, because a lot of times if you purchase a product, I'll do a basic training with you to get you to be able to understand what I just went through, but get more detailed. One thing that we do offer new customers is something called the Jumpstart program here, just so you're aware of. What this basically does is it gives you about 88 hours of custom consulting where you basically tell us what you want and we'll build it out. Depending on the complexity, you might get 1, 2, maybe 3 solutions out of this. It just all depends on the complexity. Like, what I just showed you, I built in, less than an hour. That's something that can be built really quick to a production quality, probably using about 12 hours of your time here. So, but I have had customers that have given us projects where, the 88 hours was just barely enough to cover a very complex end-to-end solution. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. I think the big thing here is the training as well. So we do 2 3-hour sessions, and then allow you to ask all the questions you want to and do stuff like that. So that's available to you. And let me just give you the contact information. And if you want to trial this product as well, you can send me an email. I'll send you the slide deck today. Later on today, as I get some time to send it to you. But also, if you have any questions or want me to go into greater detail or have some POC that you need to have built out, I can help you with that. And so when you subscribe for a Nintex trial, we will actually give you 30 free days to try it. And if you contact me, I'll actually help you set that up from installation to getting you going on your first couple projects. So I kind of wanted to respect your time. I don't see a lot of questions here. So go ahead and please send me any questions that you have to alexv@netwoven.com. I really appreciate your time today, and I hope to work with you in the future. Okay? Thank you very much.